Well, welcome. Hello. It's time for Blocktalk. We're on Bitcoin block 477080. Let's see, network looking good. Really low mempool right now. And we got some cool resolution going on in the next couple days here with SegWit most likely getting triggered. Um, let's talk about our sponsors here for a brief moment. We have coin cards, over 40 cryptocurrencies accepted through Shapeshift and Bitcoin to convert it into your gift cards for hundreds of Canadian vendors and people who sell products, and also great services like for the topic of our show tonight. You could even go to the Microsoft Store, Steam Store, Sony. There's a lot of ways you can spend your Bitcoin this day. And we're really happy to have the creator in the room here. Thanks, Mike, for sponsoring the show, and we appreciate the service. It's very well done. We also have Bittrex. So these guys based out of Seattle. They're a fully registered exchange that's adding new features and new markets every day. They are just getting fiat trading sorted out, but you can do wire transfers to buy Bitcoin. Yeah, they have a lot of really good markets there. So we're really happy they're working hard and providing an awesome exchange for us. As usual, if you guys have any questions or you're wanting to just hang out and shoot the shit, check out the troll box, and we'll be watching it thoroughly. So, without further ado, hello everyone. I'm Alex, and I'm here with our awesome guest today, Andrew Wagner.
Thanks, Alex.
So, Andrew, what is the coolest thing going on right now in blockchain gaming?
There's been a lot of developments, actually. I mean, there's been some good and bad. There's been a huge number of new titles. One of them is going to be a guest in a little bit on the show. I think by now, I've been keeping a portfolio of them and watching them. Now we've got Spells of Genesis, Hunter Coin, now Space Pirates, Beyond the Void, Augmenters. I can't really keep track anymore. Although there's been a price crash recently. Basically, when all the coins crashed and Ethereum crashed, the gaming market kind of suffered a lot as well, which is kind of normal. I think most altcoin markets suffered in this time period. Although I think the gaming market prices got particularly hurt because of some delays. Beyond the Void, in particular, was supposed to be coming out much sooner, but they delayed until September. And traders in the gaming space or traders in the crypto space have a very short attention span. September is forever for them. So a lot of them probably cashed out to trade in things that they think are going to be active much sooner. There's been other interesting effects. I don't know if I've talked about the game CoinDroids. If you can pull things up on the screen, that might be
Yeah. Here, let me do a screen share here. And Andrew, I'll ask you to speak a little more loudly too.
All right, sorry.
It's all good.
But CoinDroids is an interesting game to show because CoinDroids shows the effect the scaling debate has had on the blockchain gaming space. Obviously, that's going to be talked about later today, so I'm not going to get too much into scaling or any position on it. But CoinDroids is a game that runs by transactions on the blockchain. Every attack you issue with your droid is launched by issuing a transaction to the blockchain. Oh yeah, there it is. They have a comic behind the game and a story they're working on. This was kind of made by a guy with more of a gaming background, and it's very interesting. But the problem being is that when blocks got really full and transactions became very expensive, this game became basically unplayable on the Bitcoin blockchain. So almost as a way of giving them the finger and trying to tell them to hurry up, he switched to Litecoin. And he claims that as soon as Bitcoin scaling is resolved, he's going to dump Litecoin. And this is a method of basically lighting a fire under their asses to hurry up.
Yeah.
His opinion. And the game was unplayable anyway. If you wanted to pay $18 to attack someone. That's very silly.
Well, that's probably something that's hurt a lot of projects is the cost of just like counterparty transactions and
for sure. And a lot of these games are on Counterparty, including the guest we'll have today.
Okay.
He may have an opinion as well. I haven't asked him yet. You can see it has real effects on the ecosystem. Oh, hey. This is a history of attacks in the game, so you can see the entire game history on whatever blockchain is being played on at the time. It sounds expensive. You issue transactions to launch attacks, but if you kill a player, you get a bunch of coins back, so you can make coins playing this game. I think I made $30 or so, not much, but it's in beta. So I thought that was a really interesting example. But in general, it's a really growing space right now. Yeah, a lot of them are on Counterparty. There's rumors. People have been there's been rumors of and people pushing for Spells of Genesis to switch to Ethereum. That I've seen on the forum. I don't know if that's a plan or that's a serious thing, but in this game, Spells of Genesis, for those who are not familiar, it's a card game where all of your cards are registered on the Bitcoin blockchain. So to the extent that the chain gets bloated, it becomes more and more difficult to trade cards and play the game. So,
well, they don't have to do the trading is the only cost, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So it's not as crucial for them as it was for CoinDroids, where simply playing the game at all incurred a cost. In this, the cost is on the developer, in fact, because whenever there's a tournament or anything, the developer they'll create some fancy new card for the victors of the tournament, where they'll do that regularly each season. That at one point that costs them like $18. So it's definitely a thing where I think a lot of developers just want it to hurry up and get resolved in some direction. I'm not sure how much they care at this point.
Well, and the cost of that security, like to switch to a different network, or if it becomes a lot more of a critical issue. Like we saw Storage was one of the major counterparty projects that moved from counterparty to Ethereum.
Yeah,
because they couldn't handle the transaction costs. Like it was ruining their micropayment system. They had their own like scaling thing that they were going to work on, but in the end, they're just like, let's just move to a better development network and something a little bit more functional, I guess. But hopefully this all kind of gets some resolution now in the next like week here to do Lightning networks and stuff. Like that will really
because a lot of these, unlike a lot of sectors of the crypto economy, in the blockchain gaming space, we're first movers. This game is playable now. So a lot of people who are thinking theoretically have less of a concern or less sense of urgency about the scaling debate, I think. And, obviously, I'm going to encourage you to try this game. It's a cool game. I play it.
So you actually have a site, right? Where
blockchaingaming.com. Need to update it with our latest guests. Cool game, Space Pirates. It's like an indie style game. But yeah, if you're not familiar, there's all kinds of advantages to integrating cryptocurrency with blockchain technology, with video games. One of the first interests for me is that I'm fairly certain it will be a first mover. Like I said, you can already play Spells of Genesis right now, and other games are going to follow later this year around September. So it's not all that theoretical, and most of these games operate in the sense where they're effectively app coins. You use the coin in the process of playing the game, and the supply is finite. In fact, dwindles. Coins are burned in the process of play.
It's very deflationary that way then.
Yes. And, and that's important for things like this because, there are a lot of projects that are trying to go out and raise $100 million, $1 billion. And that gets kind of silly at some point. A video game doesn't need to raise $100 million for stuff like this. So it's better to have, like a smaller supply, but, if the value keeps going up because the supply keeps dwindling, it's still an effective long-term economic strategy.
Well, there needs to be some like metric of use for the currency, and that's where like you can justify fundraising and the cost of it too, right?
Yeah.
So what is the game that I think you're playing most regularly right now?
It's Spells of Genesis.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because not all of the cards have been blockchainized, meaning it's still reliant on the server in many respects. They're decreasing that with each update. But I like playing it, and I like the sense of ownership. I have these cards; they're mine. They're on the blockchain.
Have there been any games using Spells of Genesis cards that aren't like official ones, like that are using the same data?
The guy we're having today is doing that.
Oh,
awesome.
awesome.
So, and this is what's very interesting, right? The blockchain gaming space is being very cooperative a lot of the time, and particularly surrounding the Spells of Genesis community, where the Sarutobi token, for example, is playable in his game, and also Spells of Genesis. I have it. I use it sometimes. I've got the little monkey.
Yeah.
But the same thing will operate here. Spells of Genesis cards will be playable in the Space Pirates game. And not only that, they'll be usable, so they'll be usable in both, but he'll also give you 5% bonus in his ICO if you own a Spells of Genesis asset.
That's really cool.
So they're all, most of them are being very friendly around this concept of true ownership is the coin they termed.
Well, and doing like a collaborative effort to make these assets worth more, because every time a card is used in another game, it has a more demand and more use, and then the price will appreciate over time. So do you have your own Spells of Genesis card? Have you created your own?
No, I don't think I'm allowed to do that.
It wouldn't be officially recognized.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily make my own card, but it wouldn't show up in the game.
We had a discussion here last weekend with some guys who took a lot of the open source aspects of Spells of Genesis and made the Rare Pepe project. They were like working with the Rare Pepe cards.
Yeah,
so
I mean, that seems kind of faddish to me. I'm not sure what's going to come of that.
We'll see if there's any games for it as well. That'd be kind of interesting if there's some games that spin out of it. Because right now there isn't a whole lot of use, I don't think, for Rare Pepes.
I think it was very easy to make the Rare Pepe concept, to extrapolate it from what was existing. But actually making a game from it is not easy. That takes effort and money. So I don't know if that'll happen.
Looks like our guest of honor has just joined us.
Nice.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. Sorry, I didn't get your name.
My name is Chris Laverne.
And you are the lead developer for Space Pirates?
That's right, yeah.
Very cool. So Andrew was just telling me that I guess you're using the Spells of Genesis cards now in your game as well, so giving them kind of more
that's right.
function. So can you give us a brief rundown of what is the Space Pirates game?
Can you hear us?
Oh yeah, sorry. I think my connection broke up a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, it's good.
So Space Pirate, it's a adventure RPG game that's been developed to sort of work around the blockchain, specifically Bitcoin and Counterparty.
Yeah, I'll get the site up here.
Sorry, I was just telling them you guys got cool artwork. We can pull it up maybe.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Let's see, spacepirates.io. Sorry, I'm usually more prepared for these sorts of things than with.
That's all right.
But it seems like kind of an indie style game. Kind of like tickled my old school,
So how did you come about on this journey of building, a blockchain game?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting, story. But basically, I'm kind of like an old school gamer. I grew up playing a lot of the, older style RPG games like the old SSI, Gold Box, Dungeons and Dragons games, and that kind of lent itself to a lot of different gameplay aspects. And then as time went on, there were some other games that I really enjoyed playing that were more of the adventure type games. And one day I was just kind of like, I was hanging out online with some people who were playing in a lot of the dice-based gambling games, and they were kind of sitting around talking, going, "Hey, you know what? Like, there's really nothing kind of new to play that kind of has some of this, has some of this gameplay that that'd be interesting and engaging. That would be more, multiplayer sci-fi kind of games." And so that's kind of what led to the genesis of building this game. And as time went on, it just became something that really appealed to me to actually go through and build. So I definitely went in and built an alpha version of the game, and started to put some of that in there. So right now we have about a little over 700 people who are in the game. And the first version, the alpha, which took place in May, we had some bitcoins that people could win. So we had 0.2 bitcoins, and one of our players ended up solving puzzles and winning that. So it was kind of interesting to sort of watch and go through the whole dynamic of that.
Oh, sorry. So you have 750 people online playing it right now. How long has this game been kind of going on? What's the timeline that you guys have been working on this project?
So the game's been in development about roughly about a year now, and the alpha version came out in April, and we're looking to do a beta towards the end of August, beginning of September, which has all the blockchain-based cards that'll be integrated in it. So you'll be able to use some of the Spells of Genesis cards. You'll be able to use our cards as part of the game. And so that's something that didn't exist in alpha that we're bringing to the beta version.
Now, a lot of the Spells of Genesis cards, I would say they're more I don't know what kind of folklore you would call that. But
Middle earthy.
Yeah. It's not too spacey, but are you?
Good point.
Are you what cards are being validated in your game, and how are they kind of tied in?
Yeah, that's a really that's a really good point, because it's kind of the universe that my game exists in is obviously a completely different universe than the Spells of Genesis kind of universe. So we're working with the Spells of Genesis team to find some good cards that can play into the actual game in and of itself, and sort of build a little bit of a history into the game that would kind of tie into some of those into some of their card titles. So that way it kind of meshes in a little bit, but not necessarily. A lot of their cards aren't really, they don't have science fiction, futuristic, kind of style to them. So it's trying to find the right cards that kind of blend into the game, our game's theme. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but
they'll have to consider that whenever creating new cards now. Is will this work really well in other games? So it will become a sort of a metric of you can consider a much broader marketplace now creating stuff. It's kind of like making songs for the radio.
Maybe you could incorporate it meta style. What if the Spells of Genesis world was on a planet in your universe? That would be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of that's kind of some of the some of the thoughts that I had as well, in order to kind of integrate that and make it so that way it's their titles are playable. But that was kind of the spirit of the whole thing, because I approached this as kind of a community kind of project, and it's kind of we don't want to be a corporate entity that says, all right, in order to use our cards or our assets in your game, they have to be licensed and that sort of thing. And that's kind of one of my concerns that I had with the Spells of Genesis team, was that I wanted to include some of their assets into our game, but I was a little bit worried about some of the intellectual property. Can I use their artwork? Can I use their titles? Is it is it something that they creative control over in order to integrate it? And the discussion that I had with them was very open, and they were like, "Yeah, sure. Hey, you know what? Use our art. Go ahead and use our go ahead and use our assets in your game." And I thought that was really cool. So it's something that's a little more collaborative than necessarily like sitting down and hammering out a contract on on what you can use and what you can't. So that's kind of the whole reason to have these assets on the blockchain that you can use in other games.
Yeah,
the spirit of it.
And it's permissionless, right? So like you don't actually need their permission to do it, but they have the license for the artwork, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I mean, I didn't necessarily like need their permission. I could just code the game to use their to use their assets in Counterparty, but it's one of these things where it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, we want to use the artwork that they've developed, that they put time and energy and effort into, and integrate that into our game, so that way it's it's something that's very playable and something that has that has that feature set in the artwork that they've developed, just to make it a better gaming experience.
I guess over time, maybe even something that could just kind of develop is you have your own artwork related to. So like maybe the name is the same of the asset, but then it has like two versions of the artwork attached to it, depending on where you go or what game.
Yeah, like a different art style but the same character. Like
yeah, exactly. Like because the character could mean something completely different. That's also kind of with the whole Middle Earth theme versus space theme. Like if there's any overlap where the name kind of makes sense, that's really all that needs to be there.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that's one of the things that's interesting is I'm interested to see how they're going to handle our cards in their game, because that's something that we talked about as well with them. And so they actually want to take some of our cards and put them into their game. So they're going to have the reverse problem that I had with their cards in our game. So should be interesting.
That sounds harder for them.
I think so. Yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly how they're going to do that, but it'll be interesting. I'd love to see their artwork and their take on our cards in their game.
Any questions in the room here, guys? I don't want this to be just me and Andrew. So what does the next year look like? What sort of features are going to be in the game that you are going to be developing now? Like you're doing this funding, like a crowdfund. So what does the roadmap look like with it?
Yeah, so it's right now it's kind of interesting, because originally all that we actually needed to develop the game was roughly about $6,000, and so it really wasn't. We ended up raising a heck of a lot more than what we actually needed to produce the actual first game. So we're gonna the first game is gonna have double the graphics, double the artwork in it, double the audio. So we're going to have some voiceover stuff. We're going to have a lot of those types of things into the game. We'll also be able to have more rewards in the game as well. So it's kind of like as players solve puzzles in the game, they can actually win not only the token that we're issuing, Rust bits, but they can also actually win the game cards. They can win Bitcoin. They can win Ethereum. They can win all different kinds of cryptocurrency that we're going to have in the game to win as prizes. But one of the things that we want to continue to do is add on to the game. So the game is kind of being released in chapters. So the first kind of chapter was kind of like the prologue, which we released, which was the alpha version, and the beta version is going to have another series of chapters, and then the final version will have more chapters in it. But ultimately, one of the things that we want to do is actually build a different style of game, because the style of game that we built right now, it resonates really well with an audience that's very familiar with cryptocurrency. It's kind of familiar with people who have either like been in IT for a long time or been in gaming for a very long time. They're kind of used to that kind of style of game that we have in it. But the next version of the game is something that we actually want to build. That's a little bit more of a 3D game that is kind of either built using the Unity or the Unreal Engine, and build something that's more expansive. So that's something that we're looking towards, building towards, getting into that towards the later half of the year.
So how much Bitcoin could I earn playing this game?
Yep.
Oh, you hear that?
Yeah. So our first version of the game, when we had our alpha, only had about a quarter of a Bitcoin in it, but the beta version is going to have 4 Bitcoins in it, and then when the final release comes out, it's going to have about 20 Bitcoins in it.
Sweet.
How long do you have to play before you earn?
It's kind of different for every user based on their own experience and kind of how good they are at solving puzzles. So we were able to sort of do a little bit of analysis and understand a little bit more about gameplay when we had our alpha version. So it took roughly about 120 hours for the first set of players to get about 75% of the way through solving the first reward puzzle. And ultimately, in order to solve the first reward puzzle, it took the player roughly about 200 hours of gameplay to get to that. One of the things that we realized is that some of the puzzles that we designed were a little too difficult. So we're going to ease up on the difficulty and stage it out a little bit to make it easier for some players to earn by putting in less hours, less time, brings down the frustration level, and kind of is more reward-based for escalating further in the game.
So I noticed Andrew was saying that you can have cards. As a person that's just getting into gaming, how would I get these cards, and how does the value go up, and so on? How does that work?
Yeah, so some of the playing with some of the cards, as an example, like by solving a puzzle in the game, you can get a card, and that card, like let's say, will allow you to access an area of the game, or a specific, or having a specific combination of the cards will let you in to another area of the game, or in fact unlock one of the rewards. So if you solve a puzzle and you have some of the cards in your deck, then that actually allows you then to progress further in the game, or to unlock a reward. So that's one type of gameplay that you can have with the cards. The other thing is that the other kind of aspect of the game is that it also plays like a role-playing game as well. So you have characters that have attributes, and you have characters that have things like hit points and armor, and the damage capabilities. And so the cards actually, by holding the card and linking it to your account, gives you the ability then to add different capabilities and increase those capabilities of your character in the game. So if you have a certain card, it might give you more armor, it might give you more attack power. So collecting these cards and then having them in your deck not only enhances your character, but also allows you to different things in the game.
So as an IPO, or ICO, excuse me, and I were to invest in the game, how would I get a return back on the money that I invest? What is the idea behind that?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, because it's like there's a lot of negativity around token sales right now, and ICOs in general. So it's kind of like there's a lot of controversy around it. Not only as having the tokens as an investment property, but also getting a return on it as well. So the token in itself is basically something that not only gives you capabilities in the game too, but also something that you can use to buy cards in the game. And you can also, you'd be able to sell your tokens as well, the same way that Bit Crystals works with Spells of Genesis. So by having a need for having these tokens in order to use them in the game, kind of creates some demand not only on the player side as well, but in order to have some of the in order to get to some of the cards, you're actually going to need to have respite, because we aren't going to necessarily allow you to buy the coins, allow you to buy the cards with Bitcoin. So you're going to have the tokens, and so that creates a little bit of a demand for the token. The other aspect of it as well is to have capabilities for players who don't have Bitcoin or don't have cryptocurrency to actually get into the game and play it. So very similar to like Spells of Genesis, we're going to allow people to actually buy some series of cards with with credit card and with things like that, which gets them sort of into the game, but not necessarily into the cryptocurrency space of it. And what we'll do is we're going to use some of those funds that players use to buy the cards with using credit card and PayPal and whatever have you, and we're going to buy back some of the rest bits, and then burn some of them, and then put some of them back into the game.
Sweet. Cool.
Yeah, those are all good metrics for like deflation and stuff, like trying to build more value on it. So if you're allowing like credit card purchases and people to kind of almost not even know they're using crypto in this environment, how are you covering, I guess, the fees and transferring assets and stuff? Like if I want to like withdraw my respite from the game or something, like who's paying the fee for that? Who's paying for the Bitcoin transaction?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's me, right? who's paying the fee, and that's something that I heard you guys talking about earlier, which is the high fee structure on Bitcoin and on Counterparty, and that's one of the that's right now it's a bit of a drawback, right? Because it's kind of like the fees are so high. I know that Counterparty is doing a lot on their end, because obviously they have other game titles that are using those tokens in order to utilize these things on the blockchain, on the Bitcoin blockchain, and that transaction fee, it's the real killer to the to the gameplay aspects, because it really it provides that extra kind of hump to get over in order to really utilize all these different assets in the game. But I know that they're doing a lot of development for like Pico payments and some other things that they're trying to do inside a Counterparty, and with the implementation of SegWit to kind of like drive down the transaction fees. So that's one of the things that we're kind of like counting on to be able to drive those fees down. But yeah, ultimately, if somebody wants to transfer a property out of the game, that's definitely something that the game in and of itself pays for. We're not going to pass that. We're not going to pass that fee onto the player.
What's the projected number of users through your beta and then final launch? Do you have that projected?
Yeah. So right now our alpha had about 700 players. We're sort of anticipating about another 30 to 40% in the beta, and then by the final version, probably another 30 to 40% on top of that. So I think we're looking at some standard growth, I think, for this year. It's not anything that we're anticipating kind of like a huge rush of players into the game. As much as I would like that, there's some scalability aspects not only to the game that we've tried to prepare for, but also that we're kind of anticipating from a token blockchain card aspect and the playability of those assets into the game. Obviously, if we bring along a lot of Spells of Genesis players, that could be a greater concern, simply because we're not built to the point where we could take on all the Spells of Genesis players by any means, but the scalability of the game could easily, right now we could easily handle double or triple the players in the game.
Are you planning on doing any advertising inside the game, getting advertisers? I mean, that's a way to bring money.
Yeah, so in-game advertising is something that is something that we've thought about to kind of monetize some of the property a little bit. But I think just in myself in playing games and then having in-game advertising, I think the trick to it is so that you kind of blend it in natively, and it's not something that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Like all of a sudden you have an interruption in gameplay that takes you outside of the game to put you into the world of the advertiser, right? Which isn't necessarily something that we'd want to do. But if integrating in-game advertising actually built some of the game to accommodate that, but I think it's it's a way to do it so that it's unobtrusive and that it's still that the advertiser is still getting what they want from the player, but that we're not overly distracting the player. I think it's a really difficult balance to do in-game advertising.
Have you thought about maybe sponsoring cards?
Yeah, so that's something that's something.
Genesis does.
Yeah, I think that's something that would be attractive. We've had a couple of people who are in the Bitcoin space who have reached out to me to do some advertising like that on the cards. So right now, our cards are basically just they've got artwork and design to it, but it wouldn't be that hard then to accommodate advertising actually on the card itself. So that's definitely something that we could do within the graphics. So yeah, it's definitely something that we've thought about. I don't know that we do it initially. That's probably something that we'd probably look at doing probably second, maybe third quarter of next year.
Can you talk about some of the puzzles in the game?
Yeah, so some of the puzzles are if you're kind of like an old school gamer and you've played games like Myst, you might be familiar with some of those types of puzzles. So an example might be like on one of the planets, the game has like there's a puzzle in there that's like a flooded tunnel system, and you can't get to the other side of the tunnels without figuring out how to drain the water out of the cave system. So you've got to solve different puzzles in order to actually get that to happen. And then once you get to the other side of the flooded tunnels, there would be a reward that would either be a card or cryptocurrency or some other type of reward for solving that particular puzzle.
Did someone put up spoilers on the website so that then the rewards could be exploited?
Yeah, so that's as I was designing the game, it was interesting because I thought, okay, like if somebody solved the puzzle, right, and you have the same, let's just say, combination of solutions that then unlock that puzzle and get that reward, somebody could then just go ahead and put that online or Skype their friend or put the steps online on how to do it, or just create a second account and go ahead and claim the second reward for themselves. So one of the things that's built into the game is it's not like randomization, but what it is it's we change the way to solve the puzzle. So there'd be a different series of actions that you have to take in the puzzle, that you have to take in the game to solve the puzzle, and so those change over time. So just for a very basic example, like let's say you have to find a series of 5 switches to turn on and off in order to get something to happen. The combination of those switches would change, and then the information that gives you the hints on how to solve that puzzle would change as well. So they would be dynamic enough to change. And some of the other puzzles would come into the using the cards to solve the puzzle. So like you might have to have like let's say one specific card to solve, to in your inventory to solve a particular puzzle. And then if somebody claimed that reward, then it might be another card. And then to figure out which card that you need, that the information to figure that out would change as well.
So any concerns about like automated players and bots?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because we actually had some players that we're trying to script in the system to try to figure out actually how to gauge it, to figure out how to get into a particular area of the game and solve a puzzle. And so they were trying to run like macros and scripts and different types of things like that in the alpha version. And I think in some cases the game was some of the initial puzzles in the alpha were so difficult that even running bots and things like that didn't really help. But one of the things that's interesting with adding the blockchain cards actually into the game is that you can't kind of script that. So you like if there's a very specific rare card that you need in order to open up a door to let you into another area, like no amount of scripting can help you get that. You have to own the card. You have to get that card. And if there's only 100 of those cards, then you've got to go out and you've got to get one of those cards, trade it with another player, or buy it.
Yeah, and like I guess the game is not as not like a lot of the other projects Andrew's brought me with like routine things like Hunter Coin. This was a very fierce topic because
still an ongoing
thing. Like, but yeah, it's the same with like trade bots. It's like if people are really good, they can actually like play against them.
Well, and the problem is in games like this, they have incentive to do so to the extent that there are rewards. In Hunter Coin, that was true. In this, it could be true as well. Although he has a bit more control over his game than the Hunter Coin team did. But yeah, Spells of Genesis has a botting problem too. Most times.
Oh yeah. When everyone's busy.
When the rewards come out.
Oh, okay.
They want to win. So yeah, he probably uses similar tactics, and it's very similar, I assume. I have a question.
Yeah, true. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Do you have like Spells of Genesis has the Satoshi card, which is worth like over $1,000. What's your Black Lotus, so to speak? You know what I mean? Most valuable.
Yes. So we do have a card called it's called the Origin card, and right now there's a very limited series of those. So only those in our token sale who purchased over 1 million tokens are getting that card, and the rest of them will actually be burned at the end of the token sale. So that's kind of our ultra rare card. That's part of our gold series of cards, and it's one of those that's going to be very much like the Satoshi card.
That's nice. For those who aren't aware, there's one card in Spells of Genesis that's consistently traded above 1 Bitcoin if you want to buy it. I mean, it's kind of a good card, but it's more like the rarity aspect, I suppose. And the cool, like, I have the Satoshi card. Everyone wants to say that.
Oh, yeah. It's the same. I've seen another network with assets. They did a deck of playing cards, and they gave it out to some of their beta testers and also like tournament prizes. So everyone wanted to get like the ace of spades, and getting like a face card was really valuable. And then it got down to like all they had was like 2s and 7s left to kind of give away, because nobody wants, I guess, those ones. Shoot, that was my question I had for you. What I guess is, or oh yeah, this is what I was going to ask is, do you have any other competitors, or is there anyone else who's doing something like this before? Are you the first to use Spells of Genesis cards outside of their game?
So far, I think we're one of the first to basically partner with Spells of Genesis and integrate their cards into our game. I think the other games that are kind of like ours in the way that are also issuing blockchain playable cards, I think they're hesitant to include some of the Spells of Genesis cards because they're really interested on selling their card. And so they don't want to necessarily add other cards into their game, because then it takes it out of their market space, and they can't, if they're offering those other cards into their game, then they can't sell their own cards. And so I think, for them I think it's more about selling their cards. And for me, my take on it is that I really want to involve as much of the community around the blockchain gaming space as possible, to really make it kind of an open environment. So that's kind of my take on using using some of the other cards. So Rare Pepe is they have a game coming out for their for their stuff. And there's Age of Chains, which is one. There's Augmenters. I know I'm forgetting another one, but there's another one out there too.
Oh yeah.
What about the Saratobi card?
Saratobi.
The Saratobi cards in Spells of Genesis already. I have it.
Yeah. So that's a good example where that card is in there, and then there's a good way to find some of those cards as well is Book of Orbs. So that's another that's like it's a wallet for players to use to hold their cards from different games.
Can you integrate with Book of Orbs? I suppose can or will you?
Yeah. So I just had a conversation earlier this week with the lead guy for Book of Orbs, and we're going to have our cards are going to be added into the Book of Orbs. So it's kind of like a big deal in our in our space to have that. So it's a great honor to have our cards in.
But it's like Book of Orbs is the primary app used to manage your Spells of Genesis and Saratobi cards and assets. So if he links with that, then they'd all have a section, like a complex marketplace for game assets. And it's cool because it can include lots of different games. But yeah, and it would give him a lot of exposure as the Spells of Genesis community is already established.
Those all use a common protocol, or you need to look up every individual one?
Well, all the ones on Book of Orbs, like him, are using Counterparty. So as long as they're all using Counterparty, I think it's very simple for him to integrate with it. It shouldn't take them much extra work.
Yeah. It's they'll appear in Book of Orbs as soon as the Book of Orbs team actually has to do some work on their back end in order to integrate it. So, like for example, taking in our artwork and things like that. So you should see our cards in Book of Orbs by end of August, beginning of September, right around that time frame.
Nice.
Oh, it's happening very soon.
Yeah, and that's when I said a lot of stuff's happening in September. That's when Beyond the Void comes out. They're hitting Steam.
Oh yeah.
So September, I think our market's going to heat up a bit because altcoin investors, like I said, have no attention span. September is like 2020 for them. So they all left for a bit.
Well, the space does move very quick. Like, it's very easy to get distracted.
Yeah, it's too bad.
But yeah, like having I guess the improvement come for Bitcoin is kind of key to a lot of these being even more successful. So I guess any comment on like the recent news in Bitcoin network?
Scaling debate, get controversial.
Yeah,
Let's talk current events.
it's kind of, you know, it's so, you know, it's actually a little more interesting for, you know, for us in particular, because our our token sale is actually scheduled to end on July 31st. So it's kind of like, you know, I couldn't have picked a worse date if I tried, but you know, it was just completely unintentional. But yeah, you know, the scaling of Bitcoin, in particularly for the game, in particular what we're doing in integrating SegWit, it gets us a lot. And it really takes, you know, I think it really takes the scalability of Bitcoin to the level that I think a lot of people wanted to see for a very long time. But you know, it's from a game development aspect and from a gaming perspective, it's kind of like I've built my game on top of the Bitcoin blockchain ecosystem, and to have a change take place that is not only very political on one side, but also very technical on the other, really presents kind of a it's a challenge, because it's kind of like if too many things change too quickly, then it could upset the foundation that I've built the game upon, as well as, you know, introduce some other things to counterparty that could then disrupt that aspect of the game as well. So, you know, it presents some interesting and unique challenges in order to basically say, right, I'm committed to developing on top of Bitcoin and counterparty. And then when something like this comes along and you have a foundational change into the way that the blockchain works, it's a little, you know, it's a little scary at times, because you're kind of like, you know, I just can't switch overnight and move to Ethereum. So it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like I've hedged my bet on on Bitcoin and counterparty. And so yes, I'm actually excited to see the changes. You know, I've been in that, you know, SegWit camp for a while, so I'm excited to see the change.
So in the near future, we'll be seeing like things like rootstock be more integrated into Bitcoin, and being available to counterparty. Do you have any kind of cool concepts on a notepad somewhere of what to use smart contracts for?
You know, it's kind of interesting, because you know, one of the earlier concepts that, you know, that we had in the game was something that would have taken place on a smart contract, because some of the earlier concepts for the game had some strategy aspect to it. So a kind of king of the hill, you know, kind of approach to the game, where, you know, if you're sitting on top of a, you know, on top of a territory, and you defend that territory in a way by having a strategy based aspects into the game, then you could then write some smart contracts to basically take advantage of that strategy aspect of it. So like base building and defending your base and those types of things around the game could definitely be built in with a smart contract, which you know, some games have kind of tried to do. There's a couple of small strategy games out there that have their own coin, where they've tried to do kind of some similar things, but not necessarily a smart contract. So I think if the smart contract ecosystem moved on to Bitcoin, like with things like rootstock and things like that, we could definitely take some of those concepts and perhaps put them into a later version of either the game that we're building or a different game entirely. So yeah.
Well, what is
This would be yeah.
you notice a smart contract is when we put a rule in the blockchain, such as you know, maybe a loan. If X happens, Y happens. So if someone sends you a Bitcoin, a better example is a will. A smart contract that's a will, if it automatically detects your obituary, will automatically release your funding to the people designated in the smart contract. It's just logic put in the blockchain. It's useful. Like an insurance company could do that. So for his example, he could go really far with that example in the far future. Really, so many things you can do with the smart contract, but it basically is about automation and serverlessness.
Yeah, anyone wanting to learn more about smart contracts or even developing their own game using like a blockchain, a great article here is lessons learned from making a chess game in Ethereum.
Go off chain.
Well, and that's a lot of the topics that it covers in here is like what is relevant to have on a blockchain, what isn't, how do you save costs, and like are you keeping the rules on the blockchain? Are you keeping the current status of the board? All these things like have a certain amount of costs, and like you really got to think about like the breakdown of like where is more important data being stored and where is like less relevant data being stored, because the game like that we're playing here, like Space Pirates, like it's all you have your own servers and everything. But you're just using the in-game assets on a blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. So, right now we basically, we have servers, and those servers are running the code, and it's integrated with Counterparty. So, all the APIs and things like that, everything programmatically is interfacing with Bitcoin through the servers. So yeah, I mean, if you developed a smart contract and moved the gameplay to there, the gameplay would then move directly onto the blockchain entirely, and you wouldn't necessarily need a server per se in order to engage in the game on that level. So I think I think you were talking about an earlier game. I can't think of the name of it. I want to say Androids, but that's not it.
Processing.
Sorry, you were muted just for a sec. But yeah, you're talking about 100-coin developments.
Yeah, no, their chief scientist, Domob, just released a new paper. And he's really going forward with trying to adapt the Lightning Network to gaming. Because as you saw from that article, you cannot do on-chain even. And then what collapsed here was the act of trying to calculate the checkmate move was very expensive in Ethereum. So all of that has to be done off-chain and then verified by hash that it was done properly after the fact. 100 coins, a name coin derivative. So, but it is such a complex theoretical stage they're at right now. I think we're still pretty far from seeing that implemented. Plus, they had another developer leave, Wiggy. He's floating. He might start a new decentralized game or try to. I know his plan. Although, what do you think of that concept, going serverlessness in the future for gaming?
I think
you're halfway there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So a lot of the smart contract development is obviously done in Ethereum, right? Because they're kind of, I think they're kind of ahead in that aspect of it. But the language of the smart contract is not only it's very difficult, and you can leave yourself open to to either attacks or just by a simple coding mistake, you could lose everything that you actually put into it. And somebody could take advantage of it. So I think my concerns, I think, are a little bit around the actual languages that are actually built around the smart contract. So example in Ethereum, it's Solidity, and one small mistake and you lose everything. Somebody could take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So I think from my perspective, I think that's kind of where the danger is. But in terms of it being a platform to develop on and to develop a game on, I think it's really exciting because it's something that is kind of beyond what everybody else is doing right now. So it's kind of the next generation of gaming, I think. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think it would be challenging to develop a game on that. So obviously somebody tried it with chess, and they ran into some scalability issues with the with the power behind it. So.
But yeah, no, they're pretty much avoiding smart contracts at this point. They're going straight to off-chain processing of everything as their plan. As for the reasons you mentioned, and just if you can, a game world is big. We can barely handle scaling with financial transactions. So it's kind of a silly idea that we're going to put a universe on the blockchain at this point. But,
yeah, I think it's too early. I think it needs more research, more development, more testing. I think it's kind of like the language of the smart contracts. I think it's it's almost like a first generation language. So like if you take a look at Solidity, it reads very much like C++. So it's like it's a very low level language that the contracts are in right now, and a lot of the developers are used to a lot of higher level languages where it's a little easier to code. You can see more of what you're trying to do actually in the language without it being kind of buried in some of the complexities of the code. And I think I just think it needs more time before going there and actually moving an entire game into a smart contract on a blockchain.
I don't know. We already asked a controversial question.
Yeah.
Do we have more of those?
Well, we're getting about an hour here. I don't know if there's any final questions in the room here. And after this, we will do a gaming hangout, I guess.
We don't have much time until
Ryzen will be in another hour.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, 50 minutes. So we can.
Well, yeah. If you guys want to try a lot of these games, you can pretty easily. We can play your demo, right? The prologue tells you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do my best to sign up real quickly here and see if we can play it and not break my laptop.
I've been playing Spells of Genesis now. Do you play Spells of Genesis too?
I do, yeah.
Where are you on the leaderboard?
Nowhere.
I win. All right.
What software do you use to communicate to the blockchain? Bitcoin D.
Oh, yeah. So for Bitcoin, for Bitcoin D, basically on the back end, we're using PHP to interface with Bitcoin D. So JSON RPC connection into a wallet.
Oh, cool. Sorry, I'm distracted here with signing up. I'm itchy to play this right now.
Yeah, I didn't really get into the game much yet either. I've been sick and busy, and I want to, because I like games like that too, actually. I'm kind of an old school gamer type myself.
Yeah, the alpha version is a very old school kind of approach to it. It's more of a text-based environment. So the beta version is going to be much more graphical. So it'll be interesting.
That's how it goes. I bet like Skyrim and Oblivion were probably really shitty little looking games back years ago, right? I like that. Keep to the roots.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like so some of the earlier concepts for building this alpha came actually from multi-user dungeon games that existed on BBSs. So back in the early 90s, you'd have people in local communities that would get onto bulletin board systems, and they would play these games, and they would they'd stay up all night playing for hours, battling each other, and doing those types of things in the game. So it's pretty it's pretty interesting to watch people play and to get into it, and battle each other, and fight each other for game items, and if you do the wrong thing in the game, you can die and respawn. So so that's interesting too.
Yeah. Another interesting question or conflict, I suppose, in the gaming space is, I think one we talked about at CoinFest with Toby founder about how the idea of these tokens is of true ownership is that they can be traded without barriers between games across platforms. But it turns out the App Store doesn't like that. And they play a very, very careful game around the terms of service. And sometimes I think it's like a wink, wink, nudge situation where because the App Store wants more business and apps on their store, but they don't want the tax man to come get mad at them. Like, I don't know, your game's not mobile, is it? I don't know if you've thought about these issues.
Yeah, so I mean, the game is actually mobile. It's the front end of the game is an HTML5 responsive game, so you can play it on your iPhone, you can play it on an iPad, but you know the
Apple already.
No, we haven't done that aspect of it because we haven't built an iOS version of the game itself. But that's something that we're actually interested in doing is building a version of the game perhaps in iOS and then putting that game in the App Store. But you know, Apple is very you know, like you said, they're very careful about the games that they add that deal with cryptocurrency. And you can, you know, if you followed Spells of Genesis and how they've tried to mitigate some of those types of things in the game. So, yeah. And, you know, it's like you want to be upfront and honest with Apple, right? And you really want to say, right, this is what our game is and this is what our game is about. And this is what we're trying to do. And it's almost like almost just by giving them that information, it's almost like you'd think they just kind of like shut you out and just like not really want to have anything to do with you and just go, no, you know, we're not going to support you or anything like that. But it is something that I would like to do is actually, you know, it might not be the exact game that we're doing. It might be a different type of game. So crowd sale is definitely, you know, provided an avenue for us to build more than just one game. So, you know, that's something that we're interested to do.
I think they probably forced Everdreamsoft to compromise, maybe. Like, I felt like BitCrystals could have been more integrated into the app than they are. And I think part of the reason of that is Apple said, we'll approve you if you know, modify it like this, cut back a bit on the blockchainization, you know, like a real...
Yeah, and it's kind of, if you actually take, you know, if obviously you played the game, and a lot of the themes around cryptocurrency in the actual game are kind of removed as well, right? As you play the game, it's definitely like a Middle Earth fantasy, you know, kind of game. Whereas when you're online and you're taking a look at their artwork and you're taking a look at their properties, you know, their properties are very cryptocurrency based, right? So a lot of their game cards revolve around the theme of cryptocurrency. You know, like the Satoshi card, right, as an example, right? But it's kind of like that gameplay aspect of it doesn't exist actually in the, you know, in the game where the theme and the properties around cryptocurrency and, like, you know, for instance, the ability, you know, you would think that you would have the ability in the App Store to like buy BitCrystals, right, and do that type and
yeah, you can't do that, right? That's probably why.
You can't, no.
Probably told them to take that feature out.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of stories throughout the past, you know, year or so about which cryptocurrencies that Apple will actually support. And, you know, I think it's like Bitcoin, Litecoin. I think there's like two others. I think one of them's Ripple, and I can't remember what the other one is.
They just allowed Dash now into the store. I know that was one of the controversial ones from a while back. It wasn't on their approved list of cryptocurrencies, but they managed to get past that now, so they can have full usage. But yeah, I think the Apple like the mobile market is really where there can be a lot of more interest gained, because a lot of people play games while they're on the bus, or
See increasing trend in gaming.
yeah, like mobile, and not having the newest, latest, greatest graphics. I think like Nintendo has their head wrapped around that real well, where it's like you don't need to have a really expensive and powerful box.
It's going mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
But have you dealt with Apple, or have you dealt with that process before? You made a previous game?
I have, yeah. So, in working with some other game developers as well, and helping them, not only do development, but also, working on their infrastructure, and some other apps as well, and getting some apps into the App Store. It is, it's not a very easy process, and it's almost like you almost have to work. It's almost like you have to work with a party that specifically negotiates like on your behalf with Apple to try to like get get the right kind of placement in the store, to get the right kind of to get the right kind of presence, if you will, into the App Store. There is some automation actually built around submitting your app, and they have some automation tools to go through and vet it and verify it, and then it gets goes through their manual audit process and those types of things. But yeah, I've had several conversations with Apple on what it would actually take to get an application or a game that deals with cryptocurrency into their App Store, and the reaction of the people that you talk to is based on public knowledge that a lot of people have of cryptocurrency, and they're kind of like, oh, Bitcoin, oh, isn't that used for like dark markets and things like that, and it's kind of like so you're trying to bring legitimacy to something, and you're trying to you're trying to spread the word about Bitcoin and get it more out there in the open. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that you work with who are decision makers that may not necessarily know what the Apple policy is, and and you're just dealing with them on what their sole opinion is. So it's a little bit of a ballet to get the right person to look at your app, to actually get it into the App Store with the right presence.
So final question here, I think, will be any advice for people wanting to build their own cryptocurrency-esque game, like with any integration, like what advice do you have for anyone who wants to combine gaming and blockchain?
I think they should just do it. I think there's a lot of intrepidation on behalf of developers who who may not necessarily be familiar with cryptocurrency, or familiar with Bitcoin, or familiar with Ethereum, or any of them that's out there. And I think they're kind of hesitant to to allow and move into that. And I think in some cases they're discouraged from doing so, either because of the high risk, or because they think that it's going to be too hard or too difficult early to integrate my game with Bitcoin. Ultimately was about less than 10 lines of code to actually connect into the blockchain. So it's not that hard, but it just requires a little bit of knowledge and and a little bit of courage to to go out there and just do it.
Awesome, great advice. So we have our tradition here to end the show with Bitcoin price predictions, and you can see we've had some very recent volatility in the price, with like $500 in one day being just kind of another day in Bitcoin. So what do you think the price will be next in 1 week's time?
1 week.
Andrew, do you have a guess?
No, $5,000.
Seems rather conservative.
You're right. Should have gone higher.
Yeah. And our lovely guest, should I completely blank on the name already? Sorry, the gentleman from
Chris.
Space Cards.
Yeah.
Chris, yes. Chris.
I'm going to say 3,000.
3,000. That's a pretty good number.
He's a pessimist.
I know, right? Come on, new all-time highs. We can do it. Mike, do you have a prediction? 4,500.
Nice.
Ooh, breakdown.
US or Canadian?
It'll be US, USD. I'm gonna be since we're going on these like nice round numbers, I'll say 3,500. I think we'll have a nice breakthrough with the scaling debate, and that will be like the 29th of the 29th of next.
Yeah, what'd you decide to do about your ICO in regards to the scale? I saw someone on Bitcoin Talk trying to convince you to change your adjust your ICO date. What'd you decide to do there?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, I'm actually going to decide over. I'm going to see how it goes, because there's some changes that are scheduled to take place actually, like in the next 24 hours, that I think are really gonna are gonna lead to me making a decision to probably pause the ICO. Over this few days between like the 28th and the and August 2nd. So I'm actually thinking about just kind of putting it on pause between those days, and then carrying back on over on the 3rd. But yeah, I thought about ending it early, but and that's where the discouragement came from. A lot of people. They didn't want to necessarily see the token sale end early. So I think I'm just going to move the date out and probably just delay it.
Cool. So where can people go to find out more about Space Pirates?
Yep. So they can go to spacepirate.io, and there you can get a link to our token sale. You can join the game. You can watch a video on how to play the game. And we have links to some of the other things that we're on. So we're on Slack, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Yeah, and we're on Bitcoin Talk as well. So, join us and come along for the ride.
Everyone watching, thanks for tuning in. Everyone in the basement here, thanks. We got a big crowd here. I promise. There's lots of people in this room, more than just this couch. And yeah, cool. Everyone at home, yeah, check out the links in the description below. Do all that social media jazz. Tell your friends, get them to download Saratobi. That's usually a good one.
He's making another game too.
Ooh.
Saratobi 2.
We'll have to get him on the show again and hear all about it.
So
yeah, thank you so much, Chris, for your time, and we'll see you in the next 1,000.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care, man.
All right, take it easy. Bye.